Chapter 26, Section 4, continued. As soon as Germany invaded Poland, France begins to mobilize because they know what this means. The French defenses were going to depend on something called the Maginot Line. The Maginot Line was a line of defenses along the French border with Germany. And I tell you what, these defenses are going to be impressive. I mean, basically, it's going to consist of a whole underground city. From the surface, you didn't see much. You saw some tank traps, you saw some gun turrets, the edges of bunkers. But if you could see what was underground, it was impressive. It was a whole underground city designed to keep Germany from invading across their border with France. By the time you got to May 1940, Belgium, the Netherlands, Luxembourg had all surrendered. Germany did not need to cross the Maginot Line to get into France now. Germany could now get into France through Belgium, completely bypassing that huge defense line. And as they go through Belgium into France, the Allied troops would be divided. You would have some down there defending Paris, and you would have others up there along the French coast. Around 330,000 Allied troops are going to retreat to Dunkirk along the English Channel. They're going to be trapped. To their back is the English Channel. To their front is the pressure of the Nazi troops. And what you're going to see is every available boat in England set sail to rescue these troops. I mean, fishing boats, tugboats, private yachts, merchant ships, Navy ships. It takes about a week, but they are able to rescue the soldiers. But not necessarily all of the equipment. Valuable, much needed equipment is left behind. As the French are falling, they're going to establish a puppet government in Vichy. It's a puppet government. It's not the real government. You're going to see a secret organization form to oppose the Germans. Very creatively, they were called the Resistance. Charles de Gaulle is going to lead a committee called the Free French, based in London. June 10th, 1940, Mussolini declares war on France. The French were starting to realize they were going to fall. And they wanted to save Paris from destruction. They could stay behind in Paris and fight to the end, but Paris would be destroyed. And so the French declared Paris an open city. Basically, if you get to Paris, you've got us. June 14th, German troops march into Paris. The French ask for an armistice, a ceasefire. Hitler arranges for this armistice to be signed in the exact same railroad car that Germany was forced to sign their armistice in at the end of 1918, at the end of World War I. So now the only one left for the Allies is Britain. Britain is going to get a new prime minister in 1940. Winston Churchill becomes their new prime minister. Hitler has plans to invade Britain. but he hopes he could convince them to surrender first. The thing is, Britain refuses to surrender. So Hitler orders the Luftwaffe to begin a massive bombing campaign of Britain. On August 8, 1940, hundreds of bombers and fighters attack. It continues on for months, day and night, concentrating on London and other industrial centers in Britain. But the British stubbornly resist. This bombing campaign of Britain was referred to as the Blitz. And many children were going to be evacuated from London during the Blitz. Chronicles of Narnia, beginning of that movie series, starts with the bombing campaign of Britain, and the next scene they cut to is, tons of children being sent away to the countryside, out of the city. The people of London, though, stayed calm, and they went about their business. And the sirens would go off, and they'd seek shelter, and when it was over, they'd put back together the best they could, and they continued on. The Royal Air Force, the RAF, is going to inflict heavy losses on the Luftwaffe, thanks to their development of radio detection and ranging, or radar, developed by British engineers to detect enemy planes as they approached, so they could get their fighters into the air, so that they could warn their civilians to seek shelter. By the time you got to late fall, Hitler had given up on his invasion plans. But that doesn't mean he stopped the Blitz. The Blitz continued until spring. Huge areas of Britain are destroyed. Thousands are killed. The German Navy is blockading the island of Britain. Food and supplies can't reach Britain. And in March of 1941, Congress is going to pass the Lend-Lease Act. We will sell, we will lease, we will lend, if necessary, military equipment to nations whose defense was vital to our security, aka Britain. Because the worry was, if Britain fell, would the Nazis then look our way? By the spring of 41, Hitler's submarines are ravaging the North Atlantic. This includes a threat to our ships. Even though we aren't involved, our ships were in danger, and FDR is going to give an order to our ships, to our warships: shoot on sight. You spot a U-boat, fire at it, because it's going to fire at you. FDR and Churchill are going to secretly meet off of the coast of Newfoundland, where they're going to have a meeting and they write the Atlantic Charter. The Atlantic Charter was an agreement between us and Britain to not pursue territorial expansion, saying that every nation had a right to their own form of government, guaranteeing freedom of international trade. All countries should have equal access to raw materials, and aggressor states, Germany, Italy, need to be disarmed. And I love the last one because it sounds so perfect. All nations would work together to rid the world of fear and poverty. Hitler was making plans to open up a second front. There's only one other direction you can go, and that's east. The Nazi-Soviet pact was supposed to prevent this, but one of Hitler's goals had always been to destroy communism. Germany wanted the Soviet land for German settlers. the rich grain fields to feed the German nation, the oil, the coal, the iron ore to supply that German war machine. Hitler had signed the Nazi-Soviet pact to buy himself time. He never intended to honor it. And by June of 41, German forces were amassing along the Soviet border. Over 3,000 tanks, 5,000 planes, 4 million soldiers. And on June 22nd, 1941, German forces sweep into the Soviet Union on a front that extended from the Baltic Sea to the Black Sea. Now you know Britain and others immediately wanted to look at Stalin and say, "I told you so." But there was no time for that. Britain and us immediately offer help and support to the Soviets. We are going to expand the Lend-Lease Act to include the Soviet Union as well. The Soviet Union was not ready for this. They were caught off guard. They were suffering enormous losses. The Soviets held off the Germans while slowly retreating, and they were using scorched earth tactics, burning the crops in the field, destroying whatever equipment they couldn't take with them. That way it wouldn't fall into the hands of the Germans for their use. And by the time you got to October of 1941, Germany was only 50 miles away from Moscow.